So who do you need to trade for in fantasy football and who needs to get off your roster right now? We'll go through all of that in this week's episode of the Fantasy Football Trade Desk. As a reminder, you can click the link below to get my full article with all my trade recommendations for this week. And in this video, we're going to highlight some of the trade recommendations that I think can help you maximize the value of your roster right now. Some of them are going to be for immediate impact, and others are going to be guys I think could be really interesting stashes for you that could hit home runs for you in the weeks ahead. We'll start with the bad news and go over my sells for this week, but this is a week of optimism, so we have only one sell recommendation of this week, and we're going to run a process on a player, which is when we explore the trade market for a player to see if we can trade a guy at high value who we think is going to come down in the weeks ahead. And so the player we are going to run a process on is Kansas City Chiefs running back Kareem Hunt. Now, Kareem Hunt was a free agent up until a couple weeks ago, so the fantasy manager in your league may not actually be very interested in trading for Hunt, but he has also had a workhorse role on the 6-0 Kansas City Chiefs over the last couple of weeks, and that usually entices fantasy managers, so I think it's worth exploring what the trade market is for Hunt right now. Without Rashee Rice, the Chiefs have really leaned into a run-heavy offense. Hunt has played on 63% of the team snaps over the last 2 games with 70% of the rushes, and has also run a route on almost 50% of dropbacks over the last 2 weeks. That has led to just under 20 fantasy points per game and half PPR scoring for Kareem Hunt. So that is a really useful and enticing role that somebody might be interested in having on their team. However, right now, I just don't think Kareem Hunt looks like somebody who is a vastly different running back than we've seen who struggled over the last couple of years in Cleveland. He is 29 years old. He's not forcing a lot of missed tackles. He's not gaining a lot of chunk yards on the ground. He's not gaining many yards after contact. And that's also not even including the fact that the Chiefs running back situation could get muddled if we get one or both of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Isaiah Pacheco back in the weeks ahead. So I think Kareem Hunt really could settle in as a fringe RB2, RB3. And if we get both Edwards-Helaire and Pacheco back in those weeks, this could be the situation that we really want to avoid, or Hunt could lose all fantasy value altogether. And so there's a lot of risk there that I think now could be the time to move on from Kareem Hunt. If you're in a good situation in your running back room, you could trade Kareem Hunt straight up for Deontay Johnson, or maybe Jalen Waddle, who could see a boost with Tua Tagovailoa coming back. And the Fantasy Life Trade Analyzer suggests that that's a value for the fantasy manager getting Kareem Hunt. So you could show the fantasy manager in your league that if you want to get either of those deals across the line, and those are deals I would do for Kareem Hunt right now. The next buy recommendation is to buy the dip on Buffalo Bills running back James Cook. James Cook missed week 6, and then we saw rookie running back Ray Davis explode for 152 total yards in national television in a win over the New York Jets. And that caused people to call for Ray Davis to be the starting running back in Buffalo, suggesting that James Cook was better as a change of pace back and that Ray Davis fit the Bills' downhill running style more. And then we saw Ray Davis come out and take 5 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown in a week 8 win over the Titans, while James Cook had just 32 rushing yards on 12 carries. Now, Cook did save his fantasy day with a touchdown, but there are still some calls for this to be a committee. And so I think that there's the possibility that you could get really good value by buying on James Cook now. First of all, the Tennessee Titans are a really good run defense. They average just 3.9 yards per carry allowed. That is 4th best in the NFL. And James Cook still had a really solid usage rate last week. He was on the field for 54% of the Bills' snaps. He took 63% of the rushes and ran a route on 46% of dropbacks. That's pretty much in line with what he was doing before that really good Ray Davis game. So you're not really seeing a usage decrease from James Cook, and this Bills offense should get better with Amari Cooper in the fold, but they're not going to just start slinging the ball over the field all the time. They really do want to lean into the run. So I think that James Cook is still a high-end RB2, and I just don't really think he's valued as that across the league right now. The Fantasy Life Trade Analyzer suggests that you could trade any of Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, with concerns around Jaden Daniels' health right now, or T. Higgins, and get James Cook back, and that would be a benefit to the fantasy manager getting James Cook. But I think if you are in a good situation at your wide receiver spot and you floated trades with any of those 3 guys straight up for Cook, I think you would find some fantasy managers who bite. And if you want to add in a bench flyer to really kind of sweeten the pot a little bit, I would do that as well in those trades to try to get James Cook onto your roster. Before I get to the other players I'm buying, pause this video, comment below. Let me know which players you're trying to trade for or trade away, or ask me any fantasy football questions, and I'll get to those as the week goes on. The last buy recommendation is to buy high on Cleveland Browns tight end David Njoku. Too often in fantasy football trades, we're looking to buy a player when they're at their total bottom value. But I really do think that you can have some success in buying a player when their fantasy manager thinks that they're selling high, but you think the value could get even higher. Those deals tend to be easier to make. I had David Njoku listed as a buy low target in my article last week, and he had 10 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. So I think now you could still buy him before he really explodes continuously. What I said last week was that David Njoku looked to be the primary pass catcher for the Browns with Amari Cooper now in the Bills, but David Njoku had averaged just 6.3 fantasy points per game up until that point and wasn't entirely healthy. Plus, he was catching passes from Deshaun Watson, who was arguably the worst quarterback in football up until that point, so you could have gotten Njoku for a low cost. Now you're obviously not getting him for as low of a cost, but he still remains the top pass catcher in this Cleveland Browns offense, and his value, I think, could really set to increase if the Browns turn to Jameis Winston at quarterback. Winston was the quarterback who threw the touchdown pass to David Njoku last week. In Week 7, Njoku increased his usage role even more, suggesting that he's getting even healthier. He ran a route on 84% of dropbacks and had a 28% target share. That was after a 37% target share the week before. So 30% target share for a tight end makes him a clear tight end 1. However, there are still some concerns about what this Browns offense is going to look like after the Cooper trade or after the Watson injury. Are they going to go with Dorian Thompson-Robinson? Are they going to go with Jameis Winston? So I think that there is the opportunity to buy shares of David Njoku now before it seems like a clear indication that he is a tight end 1 the rest of the year. And I think he's easily a top 6, 7 tight end the rest of the way, given the uncertainty at the position. So I'm trying to get shares of David Njoku now before he explodes again. That's going to do it for this week of the Fantasy Football Trade Desk. As a reminder, you can click below to read my full article with the rest of my trade recommendations. Like and subscribe to get this video every single week, plus the rest of our fantasy football and football content over at NBC Sports. And I'll be back next week for more trade recommendations. Happy trading.